Welcome to Ochenta Stories. Recorded in bedrooms, living rooms, closets, and balconies in quarantine around the world. In each short standalone piece, artists, writers, creators, podcasters, and more answer the question, what do you want to hear when this pandemic is over? I'm your host, Lori Martinez. Today's story comes to us from Nice, France, written and performed in both French and English by journalist and award-winning audio documentarian Neil Sandell. In this touching sound documentary entitled The Bells, Neil reflects on the new normal. Before we jump in, a note for listeners. Ochenta Stories is a globally crowdsourced show. We received submissions in English, Italian, French, Spanish, Korean, and Mandarin. We've produced each in its original language and in translation. This work, originally in English, has been translated into French, and you can listen to that version later on in the episode. And now, without further ado, here is Neil Sandell with The Bells.
So, this is my new normal. I wash my hands 12 times a day, probably more. I scrub obsessively. I scrub hoping it will make a difference. I don't pray to a god, but I pray soap and water will ward off this virus. I pray it will keep me safe. This is my new normal, but what I'm discovering is that what's normal keeps changing. Like last Tuesday, when the full lockdown came into force in France. I live in Nice on the Mediterranean, where springtime has arrived. Around noon hour, I was out on the terrace of our apartment, just admiring the flowers. And then... that was it. That was the midday cannon. In Nice, every day at noon hour, there's been a cannon that fires. Rain or shine, no matter what the season. It's been going on since 1861. And today's cannon marks the beginning of the lockdown here and in France, everywhere in France. I'm on our back terrace, faces out into a courtyard of other buildings. It's really beautiful here. All of the flowers that are coming into bloom. Bees pollinating the flowers and new growth everywhere. We bought an olive tree in memorial for Donna's father, who died this at Christmas, and it's sprouting new leaves. It's a hopeful sign. Looking for hopeful signs. Gotta keep the hope up. Gotta hope for the best. Later that day, City Hall announced the cannon would fall silent until further notice. It was not an essential service. So, another new normal to get used to. Silence. Or so I thought. But then the next day, it was around noon, my wife called me from another room. Come quick! She had flung open the doors to the terrace. Listen, she said. The bells and the birds. In these dark days, I take my hope anywhere I can find it.
Et voici Les cloches en français présenté par Neil Sandell.
C'est donc ma nouvelle normalité. Je me lave les mains 12 de fois par jour, probablement plus. Je me frotte de façon obsessionnelle. Je frotte en espérant que cela fasse une différence. Je ne prie pas un Dieu, mais je prie pour que l'eau et le savon éloignent ce virus. Je prie pour qu'il me protège. C'est ma nouvelle normalité. Mais ce que je découvre, ce qui est normal, ne cesse pas de changer. Comme mardi dernier, lorsque le confinement total est entré en vigueur en France. J'habite à Nice, au bord de la Méditerranée, où le printemps est arrivé. Vers midi, j'étais sur la terrasse de notre appartement à admirer les fleurs. Et puis... C'était ça. C'était le canon de midi. À Nice, tous les jours à midi, il y a un canon qui tire, qu'il pleuve ou qu'il vente, quelle que soit la saison. Ça existe depuis 1861. Et le canon d'aujourd'hui marque le début de l'isolement ici et en France. La terrasse à l'arrière de mon appartement donne sur une cour avec d'autres bâtiments. C'est vraiment beau ici. Toutes ces fleurs qui s'épanouissent, les abeilles qui pollinisent les fleurs. De nouvelles pousses partout. Nous avons acheté un olivier en mémoire du père de Donna, décédé à Noël, et il pousse nouvelles feuilles. C'est un signe d'espoir, à la recherche de signes d'espoir. Il faut garder l'espoir. Il faut espérer le meilleur. Plus tard dans la journée, la mairie a annoncé que le canon se tairait jusqu'à nouvel ordre. Il ne s'agissait pas d'un service essentiel, donc une autre nouvelle norme à laquelle il faut s'habituer, le silence. C'est du moins ce que je pensais, mais ensuite, le lendemain, il était presque midi, ma femme m'appelait d'une autre pièce. « Viens vite !» Elle avait ouvert les portes de la terrasse. « Écoute, dit-elle. » Les cloches et les oiseaux. En ces jours sombres, j'emmène mon espoir partout où je peux le trouver.
Neil Sandell is an independent producer living in Nice, France. For many years, he was a senior producer at CBC Radio in Toronto, Canada. His work has been heard at public events in Italy, Ireland, Portugal, and Croatia. Thank you for listening to Ochenta Stories. If you like what you heard, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts in whatever language you choose. Follow us over at Ochenta Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram for updates. You can find transcripts and learn more about the project, which is still accepting pitches, over at ochentastudio.com/ochentastories.